All right, I put on my good suit, my good tie. So today we can talk about Power Apps and Power Automate jobs, how to get them, how to win your interview, some of the different job titles, just kind of a lay of the land, right? You guys have asked for this video for a long time, just an overview of what I see out there, some interviewing tips, and where you might go with this whole Power Platform career thing. So I thought today I'd get dressed up so we could do that. Minus the dressed up part. If you know me at all, you know that 30 seconds of wearing a tie almost killed me. So let's jump in. Also, we're going to do this one a little differently. We're going to do it in all PowerPoint. I don't have anything to demo. We just want to talk through this. And speaking of the PowerPoint, I built this with Copilot, right? So I have Copilot for Microsoft 365 as part of our upcoming AI stuff. And I basically let Copilot build this deck. Like I did the words, but I had to design what it looks like and kind of help. So if it looks a little not perfect, well, I'm going to blame Copilot, not me. And speaking of this not being perfect, just keep in mind that like as I go through different roles and stuff, like you'd be like, oh, but I know somebody that does this, or I know somebody with that title. It's okay. Like this is just general broad strokes of what I see. You will know specific people that are different than this, and that's all right. But this is the big picture, the more common stuff. So the first one is everyone's favorite, right? A full-time internal role. So you work at a big company, medium company, small company, doesn't matter company size, but your full job is building Power Apps, Power Automate all day long, right? I talk to people all the time to get to do this. One of the things to kind of keep in mind as they do this is they're usually kind of bolted into the IT department and their titles are all over the place, right? Some people are just developers. Some people are business analysts. Some of them are process optimization, right? There's all types of different titles that fall into people that carry this full-time role. All of them really love the Power Platform. Like these are a lot of the people we'll see show up at our training classes and things because they're really focused on this. Title-wise, though, one thing to look at if you're looking for one of these roles is it's very rare that we actually see Power Apps or Power Automate in the title, right? Like you're looking for a job that says Power Apps Developer. They are out there, but for every one of those, there's probably another 1,000 jobs that actually do that same thing, but don't call it that. So you have to kind of read between the lines when you're looking for jobs. If you're searching the internet boards, trying to find these things, like it's not always painted so well. But the key thing you're looking for is like, hey, someone that is here to make other people's lives better by building, maintaining, deploying, managing, governing, scoping out. Like there's all these different internal roles about this. Also, there's a lot of evangelist roles out there. So there are companies that have really invested in the citizen developer program. There's companies out there with thousands of non-IT people that are building apps. And so sometimes you'll see these evangelists or, adoption or implementation roles. And your job is not to go build thousands of apps, but is to empower, train, support those people that are building those, right? So a lot of different full-time roles, but if you're looking for one of those, just make sure that, you're not just focused on is Power Apps in the title. That's usually not the case. This is probably the most common one that I run into with people, right? The other duties as described. So their job is accountant or CEO or mechanic, right? Like they have all these different job titles, but somewhere along the way, they tripped over the Power Platform. They started working with it. And it turned out that, they were good enough at it that people started to say, hey, can you build me an app in your spare time, right? Like, can you build me this as your other duties assigned? So it is not something they're doing 40 hours a week. It might be something they're doing 10 or 20 hours a week, kind of augment their job. And these people are typically people that are saying, hey, I'd love to do this full time, but their job hasn't evolved into that. So just keep that in mind. Like if you're that person, you're that, part-timer that really is enjoying this. Sometimes if you're just kind of say, hey, I would like to do this full time, like just raising your hand and saying that sometimes can get you moved into that full-time category, So keep in mind, there's a lot of people that are doing this. Other people, though, they just love it. They're like, hey, I love being an accountant. I don't want to stop being an accountant, but I enjoy spending 10 hours of my week building apps to help my department, my coworkers do better stuff. Awesome. Keep it up then. The third one here is Hobbyist, right? And what a weird picture that Copilot put here. Like it made all these, remember, not me. But the Hobbyists, these are people that are just doing this on their own. So, at work, they literally have zero Power Platform building responsibilities. They're not allowed to work on, right? They got to do this and this from 8 to 5 every day. Like there's still people that, are stuck in that bucket, but then they're going home on the weekend and they are watching videos, reading blog posts, getting involved in the community and social media. They're tinkering with it on the weekends to build maybe a personal app, maybe one to, manage their own life. Like I know a lot of people, that's kind of their start was they built a Power App to manage, where to go on a date, right? Like two of the people that work here, that was things that they built going into it, or manage their shopping list. So people build these things for personal use Those are my hobbyists. And they're the ones that are, eventually going to say, hey, they'll be at work and be like, oh, you said go build a new spreadsheet to do this. We could build a Power App, right? Like they're people that are trying to become the as other duties described. But in the meantime, they're just enjoying this learning, right? The fun of low code and no code. Now, if you find yourself in an internal company and you're trying to grow your internal role from something I barely do to something I do all the time, like I mentioned before, raising your hand and saying that's what you want to do, that works a lot of times, especially if you've started to roll out some apps in the org and the business is seeing value. Now, to help them see the value, one of the things you want to do is make sure that whoever the stakeholders are, whoever's seeing the most value out of that, which is usually someone up the food chain, right? Like who's getting more productive people, blah, blah, blah. Like making sure they understand that you built the app or the workflow that is automating that and you really enjoyed that. And this is all the productivity gains. Here's the amount of usage we're seeing. Here's the amount of activity it's getting. Here's the amount of new requests I'm getting, right? By giving them numbers, details around, hey, the organization's digging this thing. Wouldn't it be awesome if I could do this all the time? Or wouldn't this be awesome if I could get someone else doing this with me part-time? Asking with some type of metric tied to that, being able to prove to them that it's not just this thing that you built, but it's a thing that's being used 712 times a day is how you're going to get them to grow your internal role. Now, if you're not internal roles, like so me, here at PowerApps 911, we do consulting. So we have consultants. I'm not going to read all the words on the screen, but I left them there because I typed them in. I thought you might benefit from them if you want to just pause and read them. But really when I look at consultants, right, like we kind of think of them, and there's a lot of different titles you're going to see here, consultant and architect or senior architect or PowerApps Ninja. Like there's a lot of roles, there's a lot of titles, and I don't really worry about titles too much. I kind of put consultants into 3 buckets. And it's important you kind of understand the buckets if you're going to try to transition from an internal role into consulting. The buckets kind of bolt down to the first level is, hey, I'm good at apps or flows. Like I kind of know these things. I can build an app. I'm usually that first level consultant's really good on like a specific data source, often SharePoint. Like they're like, hey, in my lane, I can build a solid app. But where these people start to struggle is when we start to bring in a more complex data source. So if we say, oh, now I need you to build this thing on Dataverse. Now, instead of using forms for everything, I need it all to be patch, or I need this thing to be offline, right? So that level 1 person is someone that still says, okay, I mean, I can learn that stuff, but they don't just know how to build that off their top of their head, right? That level 1 is, I'm really good at this thing in my lane, and their lane can be different things, but they know what they know, and they like to kind of stay in that space. Level 2, this is someone that says, all right, I know my lane, and my lane is bigger, right? Like I am okay with Dataverse and SQL, and maybe I also am pretty good at Power BI or model-driven apps. Like I've got some of these extra things going on that I can handle, but if you decide to ask me to build an app, maybe it's, interacting with an Azure API, a new web service I've never seen before, I'm going to tackle it as a level 2, but I'm going to be uncomfortable the whole time. Be like, oh, okay, I think I can figure this thing out. And they're going to grow and learn, and they're going to be happier when they're done. But the process of building at that, that thing that is outside of their lane, even though their lane's gotten a lot bigger, there's still a lot of things outside their lane, they are going to not be as excited to kind of work outside that lane. Whereas my level 3s, right, sometimes you'll see titles like architects and things like that here, but these are the people that are like, hey, my lane is giant, yay. And if you find something outside my lane, woohoo, I want to go figure it out, right? I want to learn new techniques. I want to have to solve a problem no one else has ever solved before and invent some new way to twist 3 controls in a formula together. Like that's the thing that drives them. And when you give them that thing that's outside their lane, they're just going to go hunt and attack it and live for it until it's over. These are gross generalizations, right? Like these don't line up with the levels here at PowerApps 911 either. But these are just the buckets that I kind of think about when I think about person. Like, hey, I can do the things I know how to do and I'm really happy. I can do a lot more things and I can sometimes, and I'm okay with going outside that lane, but I'm not going to enjoy it until I've kind of got it all figured out, or woohoo, the world is my oyster, right? That's how I think about the different levels of consulting. So if you're looking to move into consulting, think about where you are there. And if you read this and you're like, hey, I feel like I'm in Shane's level 1 bucket, then start to ask yourself, what can I do to get into level 2? Well, maybe all your apps are built on top of SharePoint. Maybe in your spare time, go build an app on Dataverse. Start to poke the bear, replicate your hardest SharePoint app in Dataverse. Like, whoa, how do you do relationships? Is it different, better? Do that type of thing. Oh, you want to jump into that level 3? Well, I'd start to really understand APIs and JSON and just starting to say, hey, what are the things that no one else wants to do in this space that would be valuable? And now let's go deal with those. But please don't get hung up on how I built these out, right? This is generic bucket thinking so that we can have a conversation. It is not, oh my goodness, I'm a level 1, I'm level 2, level 3. Like, that's not a thing. Okay, so let's talk about keys to getting a Power Platform job and how weird this slide was when I had to fix this one enough to be able to see it. So when you're applying, right, and it's like we're hiring at PowerApps 911 again, so I'm about to go through this cycle of hiring. So I'm gonna give you some tips, and if you're applying, well, then you probably know some things going into the interview. Shh. But the first one is try. That sounds really dumb, I know. But so when you're applying in an organization, everyone's got different things, right? Some people want you to go apply through a third-party website. Some people want you to send in a resume and a cover letter and all this fancifulness. Some people like us, we have a Microsoft form that you fill in, right? With kind of a breakdown of your skills and all of, some little places for some comments, but we kind of have this form. I can't tell you how many people show up to that form, which is literally the only thing we're going to look at. We don't look at your resume, we don't look at anything. We just kind of go off of what you answer on this form, and they will literally put in the least amount of effort possible, right? They'll click a couple of things, boom, 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 boom. The places for hey, why do you want to work here? They'll be like, I want a job. There's so much of just putting in some effort there. Now, don't over try. Don't be like, okay, so I'm going to apply. I'm going to fill out this form with 1,000,000 words, and then I'm going to go on LinkedIn and find everyone at PowerApps 911 and send them all a personal note. That's too much, right? But you got to put in some effort. But every organization that you apply at, that effort and what you need to do is different. But just if you're finding yourself like, hey, I can apply in 30 seconds to 15 jobs, you're probably not putting in enough effort to get noticed. So just try a little bit. The second one, this is so important. Have something to demo. We're going to come back to this one a couple more times in the presentation, but having something to demonstrate, so having a sample app of yours that works, that has functionality that you're proud, things that you've built, all of that is going to be very important to actually getting a job in most environments. Like if you're interviewing for a Power Platform full-time job and they don't want you to demo anything, I'm not really sure that they know a lot about what's going on with the Power Platform. I'd be a little nervous, or at least know going in there that you might be the smartest person once you get there. But you should have an app. When you hop on that interview, you should have a demo app loaded in your browser, ready to go. And if they say, hey, you want to show us anything, boom, hit share and you're off and running, right? Be ready to demonstrate what you can build, because that's what's going to drive a lot of these conversations, that demonstration app. And that's why in my Power Platform University, we have people build this very large, complex solution, right, with very specific requirements, because we know that if someone pulled that open and demoed it and walked us through it in an interview, we'd be like, yeah, you know what you're doing, right? So having a great demo app invested in, very helpful. All right, while I was editing, I realized I mentioned Power Platform University and didn't tell you what it was. So if you go over to training.powerapps911.com, right, we have the free classes, we have the on-demand classes, we have live classes. We also have Power Platform University, which is a 6-month immersive program. You get a mentor, you have a hands-on project, you have an exam at the end. It is a combination of a bunch of 18 live classes, plus the ability to do all the on-demand classes, plus any of the live classes we run during that time. You can also attend those. It's a lot. It's a fully immersive program. So if you're really trying to get better at all this, go check that out. All right, back to the show. The third one is personality. You could be the smartest person in the world. If I don't want to talk to you, you're probably not going to get hired. I'm not saying you have a bad personality, a good personality, even change your personality, but bring your personality to the process, right? So in the interview, if you're an outgoing, crazy guy like me and wears loud colors, show up and be that way. If you're a slow, methodical, resolute person, be that way. But what I don't want you to be is nothing. Some people show up in these interviews, or when they fill out their applications, they're like, I've got to just be as dry and as plain as possible to avoid offending anyone. Great. You know what you also did? You avoided getting a job. Be yourself. Have your personality. Personality is a big part of the hiring process at most companies, but it's not a thing you can practice for. So just be yourself. You're practicing for you every day. All right, so common questions that I will get. Hey, does having a college degree matter? Nope. Right. Well, it depends. So if you're applying at some fancy place and that's their criteria, then yeah, it matters, right? But Somewhere like PowerApps 911, like we have 25 people-ish here right now. I couldn't tell you more than 3 or 4 of them if they had college degrees. Like we don't ask, I don't care. It's not important. Now it's not to say you shouldn't have a college degree, or you should. I'm not here. I have one. You don't. It's great. My wife has a master's. There's all different types out here. But at the end of the day, being good or bad at Power Platform a college degree does not matter. Do I need a fancy resume and cover letter? Once again, it depends on where you're applying for. If you're applying to a small happy shop where the guy's going to show up in a hoodie for your interview, probably doesn't care about if you send me that resume with a 40-pound paper on some type of fancy linen stock. If you're applying to some fancy boutique on Wall Street to be their Power Platform developer and everybody's there in 3-piece suits and, fancy this, fancy that. Yeah. So once again, this is back to trying, understanding who you're applying for, what they're looking for from you is going to drive, how much of that shenanigans that you should be doing. Certifications. So certifications is an interesting one. Personally, I don't put a lot of weight into certifications, but some jobs, right? Yeah, you have to have the PL blah, blah, blah to even get an interview. So you need to know, like, where are they looking for? But I will tell you that people that show up at our doorstep and say, hey, I want to apply, having certifications, while it is not something that I judge your technical talent on, it does increase your value because we are a Microsoft partner, and a lot of Microsoft partners, we need so many people with so many certifications to do partnering things with Microsoft. So while I might not look at your certification as something that tells me whether or not you are good at what I want you to do here, it does go in a little bonus box for you as, that can help us, with our certification. So that's a feather in your cap. And if you're neck and neck with someone, that might be the thing that pushes you over. So certifications have value, but maybe not the same value you thought. And then last but not least, do I need an IT background? No. 50% of the people that I speak to at conferences in my training classes are not from IT. I don't know the breakdown here at PowerApps 911, but I would say about the same. About half the people are not IT. Some of our most advanced people are not IT. Right? It's just normal. One of them was a CPA that fell in love with the whole model-driven Dataverse Dynamics world, and now he works here. Right? He's one of our senior architects, or I don't know what his title is, but he's a really smart dude. Allison on our team, right? You guys have all met Allison over the years. Allison manages the bulk of our consultants here. Allison's background was, I forget, like social work or something. She came to us from doing like nonprofit work. And at that job, she became someone that was a hobbyist. And then she became somebody who was doing it as other duties described. And then she jumped over here, became a consultant 1, went from 1 to 2 to 3. Once again, we don't actually have those buckets, but conceptually she went there and now she's running half this place. So, it's really interesting how, IT is not important. It has its role though. Sometimes we need a very IT centric person, right? Like if we're looking at someone to do more API driven stuff, big data, plugins, that type of stuff, a pro IT background is very helpful. So we have people that we need to have that role specifically, but broadly speaking, there's nothing stopping you from getting a consulting job just because you didn't come out of IT. Common interview questions. And look at that fancy. Like I got the interview wrong, but once again, Copilot did its thing. So this is probably what you're waiting on me to tell you all the interview questions and how to get them right. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you some interview questions and talk to you about why they matter and how to prepare for them, but I am not here to help you ace your interview. Well, I'm here to help you ace your interview, but not by telling you the answer to C. Okay, the first one, you want to have a great interview, have that demo app we talked about. Why? Because if you can get them, when they say, hey, let's talk tech, and you say, hey, I got a demo app, and they say, oh, that'd be awesome when you share, you can drive the interview. This is a way for you to take the power back. Okay, because now if you open up a demo app and you start showing us your code and walking us through, we're going to ask questions. We're going to have the technical conversation very ad hoc during the course of your demo. Oh, you use the attachment control there. How did you do that, right? Or you've got this flow integrated. Like, what did you think about that? Right, that's going to start driving the technical questions. Why this is such an advantage for you is if you built the demo app and you understand it inside and out, you're basically setting us up to ask questions you already know the answer to. Yeah, right? So it's a way for you to drive the conversation. Now you got to be smart though. Don't put things in the app that you're not comfortable talking about. So if you went off to one of my videos and stole some of my complex for all, and you don't really know how it works, you just kind of copy and paste it and it worked. Well, when we trip over that, we might say, hey, explain that to me. And if you go, well, I copied that off one of Shane's videos and I don't really understand, that's okay. Like, we're not going to dismiss you right away, but you set yourself up for having to say, I don't know, right? Like, so let's get that code out of there, or go understand that code so then you can talk about it. You really want to impress us? Say, hey, that's some code I stole from a video, and here's how I adapted it. Here's how I evolved it. Because that's another one of those kind of bucket things, right? Like, a level 1 bucket person can grab stuff off YouTube and use it. A level 2 bucket person can take the stuff off of YouTube and, use it a little bit outside the box. Level 3 people take stuff off YouTube and then use it as a foundation to do something totally different, right? It's another chance to kind of show like where you are on that scale. How did you take that code that you were given and do things with it? All right, delegation. Every interview I've ever done, I've asked them to explain delegation to me. As we do it here, we all know that delegation is very important, and that's why we want to have this conversation, but it can just be very educational for me on where you're at in your life cycle. So if you're sitting there going, I don't know what delegation is, we should probably watch the delegation video and then watch it again and then watch it a third time, because you really need to understand delegation inside and out. And, but be honest here. Like, if someone asked you about it, and so you went and studied a whole bunch because you watched this, like, be like, hey, here's what I know about delegation, but like, I've never really had to do much with it in practice, right? That's going to shape, whereas if you're like, oh my goodness, I fight, non-delegable queries all the time. I've had to do nested stuff. I've had to, build these things. Like, I've had to tell the customer no. Like, it's just a chance to have a conversation with how much you've done with this, because it is irresponsible to build a Power App if you don't understand delegation. So that would be something that I would expect every technical interview ever to at least talk to you about delegation. So feeling more comfortable, even if some people understand it, but they can't talk about it. If you understand it, but you struggle to talk about it, then practice talking about it. Go teach it to your partner. Go teach it to your kids. Go teach it to your dog. Like, just so you get practice using the words around delegation. There you go. That is the most concrete of, Shane questions that I will ask in every interview right there. So another one I'll ask people are, what are your thoughts on Power Apps or Power Automate or Power BI or Dataverse? And this is one of those ones you're like, that's a weird question. I know. Right, but the idea here, the answer isn't like I'm looking for an exact answer out of you. What I'm looking for is your understanding, right? Like, so if I ask you, like, what do you think of Power Automate? And you're like, oh, sunshine and rainbows, woo, it's amazing, it's awesome, I love it, it's so amazing, it does everything perfect. You know what that tells me? You've never actually built anything in Power Automate, right? I love me some Power Automate. It is so important. It is an awesome tool, but it is super frustrating to work with, right? Like, let's just face it, it is. And so if you haven't gotten to the point where you have been super frustrated by it, you have never built anything hard. That's one of those kind of like trick questions almost, right? Where I'm just getting someone, like, I can just tell right away by how they start with, well, it's kind of like sometimes I'll stop, like, cool, you've said enough, right? That tells me that they've got a love-hate relationship with it. And the best Power Automate builders in the world have a love-hate relationship with it. So that's what I look for. I'm looking for the vibe. What's your favorite data source? Once again, no wrong answer. This is just another, all right, if you say SharePoint's your favorite data source, that tells me that you've probably only ever built on SharePoint, and which is fine, right? But that's putting you in a different spot. Whereas you say, oh yeah, my favorite data source is, a SQL database with Azure Blob Storage for file storage. I'm like, how did you get to that being that? Like, but that tells me you've done some really hard stuff. Or maybe not hard, but you've kind of done premium stuff. Like, you're in a different thought process there. You've had to kind of go learn Scratch a little bit harder. Or if you love Dataverse, all right, because that's an easy answer just to say, then I'm like, well, what do you love about Dataverse? Why do you, how do you handle the challenges around a choice column with it? Like, do you prefer choice columns or tables? What do you think it's many-to-many relationships? Like, you're opening the door. So be sure if you tell me that Dataverse is your favorite data source, that you're ready for me to ask digging questions on Dataverse. This is just another place to see where the conversation goes, but it's kind of one of those little things I toss out there and we see what it does. If you say my favorite data source is Excel, I'm probably gonna be like, yeah, I gotta go. Good luck next time. No, that's not fair. I would never actually do that, but it tells me a lot about what you've done with the Power Platform, because we all know that Excel is a terrible data source. Shh. Data questions. So we'll ask you things like, How do you understand relationships, parent-child type of stuff, lookups? But these type of questions, there's different levels. So if you're coming to us and saying, hey, one of my bonus skills is I'm really awesome at Power BI, great, we need people that are really awesome at Power BI also, then we're going to ask much more specific data model questions, right? Fact tables and things like that. Whereas if you're like, I just really haven't had to build a bunch of those. All right, well, that probably tells us you're back in that level 1 type of bucket. Or if you say, oh yeah, I'm the smartest person ever, and then we ask you about parent-child relationship and you start telling us about, when you lived in your mom's basement, we're like, oh, like the words that you use will tell us really kind of what you've done with that. But the more data modeling and things like that you understand, the more robust, complex apps you can build. And the more of the fancy words that you're using there are telling us, what level of education you have there, right? Be honest though, I don't use the fancy words. If you ask me what a fact table is, I would have to really stop and think about it. And that's okay, because I'm not trying to sell you as I'm a data modeling expert in Power BI. It's all right, but you just need to know what you know. All right, last but not least, the future of the Power Platform. This is another one of those, there's no right answers. This is just telling us, where are you at? Are you plugged in? Are you reading the notes that come out all the time? Microsoft puts out those, here's what we're going to go build, right? Our updates. Are you reading the Microsoft blogs? Are you on the social medias? How are you keeping up with this? What are your opinions? Do you think, oh yeah, the Power Platform's a flash in the pan. I'm just getting a job now and I'll get a new job next year. I don't know what you're going to say here, but I just want to kind of give you the opportunity to say, because it's going to then let me figure out what are you doing, right? Where are you? If you're the future, I don't know. I just build apps. Cool, right? Back to your lane, you're staying in your lane. No big deal, right? If that's what we're looking for, that level 1 lane sticker, then no problem that you don't have any deep thoughts. Whereas if you're like, hey, I'm really looking forward to this new control that's about to come out because it can do blah, blah, blah. It's going to solve my very specific problem. Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that. All right, so there you go. So there's my rundown of, different roles that we see, ways to get jobs, some of the different interview questions, just things that hopefully help you think about, hey, how do I do more with a Power Platform career? We've got a lot of opportunities out there. Hiring is still a challenge. There's a lot of people that are looking, but different people have got different ones. So hopefully this gives you ideas of where maybe you can improve, bone up, make sure that you're good. Get those demo apps. I can't stress enough how much, if you have a solid demo app that is nice looking, mechanically sound, does lots of cool things, what a leg up that'll give you in the interview process. If who you're interviewing with will let you share your app. You're driving the boat there. So thoughts, questions, comments, leave them below. Did you like this format, or do you hate this idea, or you're probably not even watching at this point anymore, right? But I just love to know, if occasionally doing videos like this that are more talking and less doing are interesting to you all, or if you're like, no, just stick to showing us how to build things, Shane. That's cool. Also, hit like and subscribe if you haven't done that. Tiss on you. Or, if you want to get better at all this, go sign up for our training. We've got, free training, we got on-demand training, we got live training, we got the Power Platform University. It's a 6-month program. There's a lot of options out there where we can help you grow and do, right? We built the whole Power Platform University to help our level 1 consultants level up internally. So you can use that too. All right. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.